We're going to spend some time talking movies this morning with our film critic here in the Florida Keys, Cheryl Rhodes. Cheryl, thank you for being back on the show.
Good morning, Jenna. How are you?
Good. I'm doing well. Are you doing okay?
Well, I'm spending a lot of time in dark theaters watching movies.
Yeah. Well, tell us, tell our viewers what's playing this week at the movies.
Oh, this week's going to be a fun week. Probably the movie that you would be most interested in hearing about is one called Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter.
Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter.
Yeah, now that sounds like kind of a strange combination, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's based on a novel by a guy named Seth Graham Smith, and it's what's called a mashup novel, where they take one genre and another genre and they just put them together and make them fit. Here you have the historical story of Abraham Lincoln, and then you have vampires, and you put them together, and there's old Honest Abe with an axe taking down the vampires. This guy's written other books along that line. He also has a book called Pride and Prejudice in Zombies, Sense and Sensibility in Sea Serpents. There are other mashup books out there. There's one called Queen Victoria Demon Hunter. There's another one called Henry VIII Werewolf. So it's taking different genres and sort of just mashing them together.
Doesn't sound like something I'd be interested in, right?
Well, the one that you might like is still playing at the Regal. It's called Rock of Ages. It's a musical, and it's kind of a 80s updating of the old 42nd Street musical movie. It's about the bright young girl who comes to Hollywood from the Midwest to become a star, meets the young boy, and there's an aging musical guy. In this case, it's Tom Cruise playing an aging rock star, and he does a great job. As much as you may love or hate Tom Cruise, you'll like him in this. He actually sings, and well. And it's full of music by all those 80 groups, everything from Guns N' Roses to REO Speedwagon, just Twisted Sister, you name them. And it's a fun movie. It's one that it's not going to walk out of the movie making you think that's the best movie I've ever seen, but you're going to walk out sort of tapping your feet.
Okay, I like that. And
there's some good movies starting down at the Tropic too. There's a police procedural movie, kind of a Law and Order type movie, a French movie called Police. That's a good ride. There's also a wonderful documentary called Lost Bohemia. And it's about the artist studios, the 165 artist studios that used to be atop Carnegie Hall in New York. And famous artists and musicians and writers, everybody from Norman Mailer to Isadora Duncan to Rudolf Nureyev to you name them, had studios and lived and worked there at one time. And then greed took over and corporate America moved in, and they evicted all of those people and wiped away the studios. And this movie is a documentary of it made by one of the residents there, a photographer who sort of saw this wonderful heritage and history disappearing.
Wow.
So that's really a moving, poignant little documentary that's worth seeing.
Okay. And now, of course, we can check out your movie reviews every Sunday in Solaris Hills, Cheryl. But on Thursdays, you also release a top 10 list that's featured in Paradise. Let's talk about this top 10 list.
Well, yeah, top 10's fun. My friend Michael Shills hates top 10 lists because he, argues with the ranking. Quite frankly, I don't think the ranking matters. If I did it twice, I'd probably do a different ranking every time. But the reason that we say top 10 is a way of sort of making it something that people can get their hands around. And why do we always do top 10s? Well, we got 10 fingers, we can count. And so the top 10 list can range about movies, anything from my top 10 favorite Westerns to my top 10 favorite, last week was top 10 favorite teacher movies. We go afield though. Sometimes we'll do the top 10 movie flubs, or the top 10 flubs that are in a particular movie like Harry Potter. And then a couple of weeks ago we did something a little different, more literate. We did the top 10 movies that should be made from books but haven't been. And that got a lot of reader feedback, and in fact we did a follow-up on it, and you were one of them. You said you'd like to see a movie made of Million Little Pieces?
A Million Little Pieces, yeah. I would love to see that in a movie.
It would be an interesting movie. In fact, there has been a movie made of it, but it's an avant-garde movie that's like 70 minutes of just a purple screen, so there's not much of a story to it.
Okay.
So yeah, it should be made into a movie, and other people came up with good ideas. John Hemingway suggested that his grandfather Ernest Hemingway's short story, A Sea Change, would make a great movie. Judy Blume and her husband George Cooper, I had earlier suggested that her book, Do You Hear Me, God? It's Margaret, should make a movie, but they said, no, that's sort of an internal movie. If you really wanted to see a good Judy Blume movie, one should be made of Wifey or Summer Sisters. So we got a lot of people to participate with their ideas and things like that. This week, this Thursday, we're again taking a little literary stroll. What we're doing is we're saying, here are some famous movies based on books, but they're books I'll bet you've never heard of. For instance, we all know Dr. Strangelove or How I Learned to Love the Bomb, the great funny comedy Peter Sellers just makes you laugh, and it's by Stanley Kubrick. And very few people know that it's based on a book called Red Alert, which wasn't funny at all. It was a very serious book, but he took the book and turned it upside down and inside out and made it funny. You know, a lot of movies are based on books that you've never heard of or authors that you've never read. Schindler's List, we all think of that as one of Steven Spielberg's masterpieces, but it's actually based on a book called Schindler's Ark by an Australian writer. And so it's kind of fun to kind of poke at movies and look at them and quantify them into 10 things that are interesting that you didn't know about movies, or what I think my top 10 list of my top 10, you know, musicals, my top 10 westerns, my top 10 whatever kind of movies. I think what it really does is it brings back a sense of nostalgia. People remember movies that they've seen and have kind of faded from their memory, and they say, oh yeah, that was good. Or it sparks other memories. I encourage readers to write in and say, you left this one off the list, or what about that one? And they have a great time.
They have a great time, and they're great to read, so keep doing it, okay? All right. Thanks, Cheryl, for sharing all of this with us this morning. We're going to be right back after these messages.